for over 20 years, in the deepest parts of the net, on every forum, at every lunch table, we in our net battlers community have had one burning question within our heads. One single question. And that question is,
what is the best way to experience the Battle Network story? Good morning, world. This is the Space Cowboy coming from the Interplanetary Good Vibe Zone, and welcome to BBS Chats, which is essentially just going to be our Mega Man Battle Network discussion series where we delve into a whole bunch of fun topics about Battle Network, and whether it's just the games, the anime, the manga, fun topics, lore stuff, pretty much anything that has to do with the Battle Network series as a whole. So I hope you guys do enjoy this one. I've been thinking about some ideas, and of course we're going to start off with a pretty simple one, as you probably might have saw within the intro of the video. Hope you guys like that, by the way. But yeah, so we are going to be talking about essentially the Battle Network story and the best way to pretty much experience the Battle Network story, because for as much as we all do love these games, the one weak element, probably the weakest element of the entirety of the series, is just the actual story and the continuity. And it's fair when you consider that this series is very much still made for children. So Capcom at the time probably really wasn't all too concerned about continuity and carrying over the story and all that stuff in comparison to its brethren with all of the other Mega Man stuff going on between classic Mega Man and X and Zero and all that good stuff. So story really wasn't much of a priority, but they still managed to craft a cool story nonetheless, and cool lore and all of these characters. And of course, as we're going to be talking about in this video, just talking about the three different mediums between the games, the anime, and the manga. So once again, I hope you guys do enjoy this, especially if you are Mega Man fans worth your salt. And let's just go ahead and get into it. So Mega Man Battle Network, the series, the video game series. So we have the first three games with Battle Networks 1, 2, and 3 that definitely feel the strongest when we are talking about some form of story and continuity, essentially because these three games have a full arc. We are dealing with World 3, we are dealing with Dr. Wily, the introduction of Mega Man to Lan, and the whole concept of Mega Man being Lan's brother, Hub Akari, in the video games. And of course, the introduction of other fan favorite and standard characters like Dr. Hikari himself, Shad, Mail, Dex, Yai, the whole 9 yards, of course, World 3. And we also have, the World 3 lackeys and all that good stuff, pretty much like the Team Rocket, at least as far as the anime is concerned. We'll get to that in a moment. But yes, the World 3 saga, as I like to call it, it definitely feels the most cohesive, as the first game introduces World 3, and that's the first time we do get to confront Dr. Wily. And then we have the second game that's essentially ends up as like a power vacuum for what happened with World 3 and how Gospel takes over, pretty much like the result of them, picking up the reins and taking up from where Dr. Wily kind of left off and trying to be like the new big organization. And then we have Battle Network 3 with the return of Dr. Wily and sort of like that final confrontation with Dr. Wily. Also, of course, Bass also feels like he's more involved. At least in the first game, I do believe he was the post-game boss, although they do still kind of reference him. He's sort of like the ultimate culmination of everything that happened in the first game. And then in the second and third games, he's actually involved in the story itself and not just a post-game boss. And it also all ends in a very bittersweet but also pretty satisfying way by the end of the third game. I'm not going to necessarily get into it. You probably understand what I mean if you play these games. But yeah, Battle Networks 1 to 3 definitely feel like they carry over each other, like they carry over their plot lines, their story beats. For the most part, I know there's still some parts here and there where they kind of pretend like certain things didn't happen or they don't even mention it, but unlike the other games, this still feels like you're playing a series of games rather than a Pokemon where the stories really don't matter all that much. And unfortunately, that's going to suffer with the next 6 games. So Battle Networks 4, 5, and 6. So here's the thing. Battle Network 4 and Battle Network 5 are essentially 2 games that are connected with each other because of who the main villain is. However, Battle Network 4 is weird because we have the new villain with Dr. Regal that gets introduced. When you're playing through the actual story of the game itself, you're pretty much participating in all of these tournaments while the actual plot happens in the background, and it really doesn't show up all that often. So BN4 usually ends up looking like a filler arc while the actual main story is kind of taking a break, but then you get back into the main story kind of sorta in by the end of the game. And it doesn't make it any better considering that we have 2 different versions of this. So considering that Lan and Shad are supposed to confront Dr. Regal by the end of the game, you don't really get that, especially because you don't really encounter Shad unless you're playing the Blue Moon version. And even if you do, there's still no reference to the whole thing of Lan and Shad coming together by the end of the tournament and going, hey, I've been hearing about this Dr. Regal guy. We should probably go check him out. He works at our father's job. Not that they would have known, because he was an evil guy. And then with Battle Network 5, that feels like the actual in-canon story that Battle Network 4 was supposed to be. And that has repercussions for what also happens in Battle Network 6. But then Battle Network 6 is also weird because Battle Network 6 was not supposed to be the last game in the series, but unfortunately due to some things that had happened, that ended up being the case. And if you've played the game, then you can pretty much tell right off the bat that the plot for Battle Network 6 does feel very loosely thrown together, and you can tell that there are some plot beats that they probably didn't get a chance to add in, or some plot beats that weren't even necessarily supposed to be there. And by the end of it all, you really feel like it's a pretty weak ending to the series. The Battle Networks 1 to 3 that feel the most cohesive, the most well put together. Battle Network 4, which feels like a filler arc that takes place in between the actual story. Then we have Battle Network 5, which is the actual arc that feels like we're picking up from the first 3 games to some capacity, or at least an evolution of that. And then we have Battle Network 6, which is like a very last minute, like thrown together plot that unfortunately just had to be the last thing that we had to play. So with the Battle Network games, for as much as we do enjoy them, even if we do enjoy these stories from some degree, at least in terms of these characters and where they go and all that stuff, there really isn't much of a story to be had there. But that's okay, because that's what we had the next thing for with the anime. So we have the Rockman EXE anime that premiered in March 4th, 2002, all the way up to its final season in September 30th, 2006. This anime had 5 seasons, with the first season, of course, that we got here in America, I believe 1 year later in 2003, with NT Warrior Season 1 that had 56 episodes. Then we had Season 2, Mega Man NT Warrior Access, with 51 episodes. The next 3 seasons, unfortunately, were not able to make their way over to America, but Rockman EXE Stream that had 51 episodes, Season 4 with Rockman EXE Beast with 25 episodes, and the final season, Rockman EXE Beast Plus, with 26 episodes. So definitely a lot better in portraying these events and all these stories and all that stuff. Although all of these seasons are not direct interpretations of these games, essentially what the anime does is that it takes the overarching element of all of the games and they build a big centric plot around the season, while also still incorporating a lot of concepts and elements from multiple games. The first season is a good example because it does have a full overarching plot with Dr. Wily that still does fit in, but they also adapt events and concepts from Battle Networks 1 and 2 and 3 all at the same time. And that usually does end up being the case also for the second season, as it still does kind of have elements of Battle Networks 1, 2, and 3, mostly 3, and then it also incorporates stuff with Battle Network 4, and then you can kind of see where all that stuff goes. So it's still a better way to actually experience some form of a cohesive story with the anime, especially because you get to watch it. It's still pretty good, especially if you get to watch it on Blu-ray. Although the big problem with this, or the big caveat with this rather, is that it is a serialized cartoon show, which again is made for children. So there are going to be plenty of episodes that feel like they're just there for bloat. Pretty much like, you know, you're watching like your early Pokemon, your Yu-Gi-Oh filler arcs, your like Yu-Gi-Oh anime filler arcs, I should say, like all that stuff. The stuff that you can kind of feel like it's not there because they're adapting things from the game. It's not like a direct 100% interpretation of what's happening in these games. They're mostly, I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're telling their own story. They're still telling the story of these games, but in a much more better, you know, cohesive structure than the games were actually able to provide. And I still think it's a pretty fun watch, if you know, especially if you're a fan of these things. Now, it is a little girthy because, like I said, at least with the first 3 seasons, that's essentially a little over 50 episodes. That's like a little over 150 episodes of show that you got to watch. And then even with the 4th and 5th seasons, which I feel like they kind of just split that in half just to kind of extend the runtime of the show a little bit more. But you know, 25 and 26 episodes, you count all those episodes together, that's essentially like a little bit over 200 episodes of a children's anime that you have to watch to really like experience like all of these plots and these stories. But again, I still think it's pretty cool. I've watched the anime myself in Japanese. It's great. I think it still holds up somewhat for the most part, at least if you're a kid like me who, I'm sorry, not a kid like me, but if you're a guy like me who was a kid that grew up around that time when you were watching like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, like those animes, you're essentially gonna feel like you're watching that, but you're watching these characters, you're watching them kind of actually bounce off each other and actually go through these events, and things actually feel a bit more dire, things feel tragic, things feel like they have some level of stakes, and like again, the anime is actually pretty cool. And then we even have a movie that came out. Now granted, the movie did not get to premiere internationally, it only came out in Japan, and this was Rockman EXE Hikari no Yami no Program. This movie came out in March 12, 2005, around the middle of season 3 at that point in time. It's pretty sick. I actually did watch a AMV of like the movie, or it's like a Rockman EXE AMV with stuff from stream and also from the movie, and you actually get to see what the movie looks like in like high def Blu-ray. And my dude, that shit looks really damn good. I'll actually put that in the description if you guys want to check it out. I think you should, because it's really good. And last but not least, we have the Rockman EXE manga. So this manga was serialized in Shogakukan's Gekkan Korokoro comic, and pretty much came out between 2001 and 2006. And of course, we got the tankobons that came out 1 year later in 2002, all the way up to 2006 as well. So this is a very interesting situation because the manga came out alongside of the anime, but it's not like a situation that you would normally see where there's a manga and the manga gets adapted into an anime. This is pretty much like its own separate continuity from the anime. So it's not like you could read the manga and you're like, oh, I'm essentially reading the anime. No, like you're reading your own story. But again, it still takes a lot of the elements from the Battle Network series as a whole. And personally, I think this is the best way to experience the Battle Network story, because the manga series is not long. It's only 13 volumes that you have to read, which I believe is a little bit below 200 chapters in the entirety of the manga. And I've read this manga to death a good amount of times during my younger years. I would constantly go into my local library and read this. It's really dope. Again, a lot of the events are different, especially when you're talking about stuff like Base. Like, he's much more heavily involved within the Battle Network story. You also have characters like Shad, who of course still remains like Shad and Proto Man still remain as like the main rivals, but like you actually get to feel that between him and Lan. You actually do get that in the anime as well, but the manga does a really solid job of portraying that too. and just like the events of what happens, all of the bosses, the battles are sick, the transformations, like all the double souls and all that stuff is cool. Unfortunately, I really can't show you much of the Battle Network manga in terms of the pages, lest I tried to get this video claimed or striked in some way. I would like to avoid that if as much as possible. And unfortunately, I also don't think there's much of a legal way to read it outside of buying these volumes yourself if you really are interested, which again, I really think you should, just because it's a short series, it's not long to read, get some really great art, some really cool battles, and a really good interpretation of just a straightforward serialized Battle Network story where I can actually feel like, I played the games and started here, and then I played the last game and I end at this point. And it's like, yeah, it actually feels like I'm reading a series from start to finish. Whereas though the games are a little bit too all over the place. And with the anime, there is a story, there are things to be had. But again, you're still watching a serialized show of over 200 episodes. That's a pretty big ask, you know, especially for, I guess, most people in today's world, you know, if you don't want to go through all that stuff. But I think the Battle Network manga is sick, and they even had a couple of specials that happened, even like a couple of one-shot specials here and there that happened after the fact. So to answer your question, the Battle Network manga is the supreme way to experience the Battle Network story. Go figure. Read a book. No, seriously, guys, I definitely think you guys, for any Mega Man fan, Mega Man Battle Network fan out there, if you haven't, definitely try to pick up the Battle Network manga. Or if you haven't watched the anime, definitely watch the anime. I do know that there are some of us out there that at least did get to watch the first 2 seasons. The first and then the later 3 seasons unfortunately never made their way over. But still, if you could find a way to watch the 3rd, 4th, and 5th seasons of the Battle Network anime, you definitely should. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope I was able to convey my thoughts well. You know, I'm sorry for if that was not the case, but I got a lot more fun topics, you know, just jogging down for this, you know, series. BBS chats, I hope you like it. Like I said, if you're a Battle Network fan, if you're a Mega Man fan, just in general, if you enjoy this, definitely check it out. I will have another BBS chat here ready for you this week. And of course, Mega Man Battle Network content as a whole will still be a thing on this channel. So if you like what I do, definitely stick around. Make sure you like the video, make sure you comment, let me know how you feel. Make sure you are subscribed. The big goal for the channel right now is still 500 subscribers, and I would like to reach that by the end of this year. So definitely go ahead and hit that sub button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you never miss any updates for videos and live streams on the channel. And make sure you are interacting with me more on the community/post section of the channel. And with all of that being said, this is the Space Cowboy, and I hope you guys have a good night.